In recent weeks, reports began surfacing that Rolex was shutting down key warehouse operations across the United States, the quiet engines that move millions of dollars worth of watches behind the scenes. We're talking about facilities that handle tens of thousands of timepieces, inventory valued in the hundreds of millions of dollars, suddenly going dark. For a brand that prides itself on precision, control, and stability, this move came as a shock to dealers, collectors, and the wider luxury market. Why would Rolex take such a drastic step in one of its largest markets? The United States accounts for an estimated 25 to 30% of global Rolex demand. Distribution hubs are critical, and closing them is not routine. It's strategic and possibly defensive. Some insiders point to rising operational costs. Others argue about tighter inventory control, shifting logistics, or preparation for a much bigger structural change. Whatever the reason, the timing is what has people talking. Demand is cooling, resale prices have slipped by double-digit percentages in some segments, and confidence is no longer untouchable. This is a warning signal. And the real impact may only be starting. Let's explore the details. The first, shockwave. People across the United States are in shock today as Rolex, the world-famous Swiss watchmaker, reportedly started closing warehouses and major facilities in the United States. This news has spread fast in collector circles, social media watch forums, and luxury news outlets. Everyone from casual buyers to serious collectors is asking the same question: what does this mean for Rolex watches in America? The buzz is that Rolex isn't just making small changes, it's pulling back its physical presence in ways that could reshape how the brand operates here forever. According to first-hand posts from industry insiders, some Rolex service centers, places where people bring their watches for repair and maintenance, have been quietly shut or had their frontline service counters removed. In one notable case, the Los Angeles Rolex Service Center, RSC, allegedly announced it would close permanently, with the company planning to handle future United States service requests from other cities instead. This news sent waves of disbelief through collectors in Southern California and nationwide. Rolex staff reportedly told customers that if they couldn't pick up repaired watches by a certain date, the watches would be shipped directly from Rolex headquarters. Some claimed the physical service facility would no longer exist after that date. These kinds of moves felt to many like the beginning of something much bigger than a simple office closure. Comments poured in from users saying, "This looks like Rolex is cutting back huge operations, and if they close major warehouses and service centers, what's next?" At the same time, other reports suggested that warehouses where Rolex used to store and distribute watches before forwarding them to authorized dealers have started to shrink in size. Dealers who were used to receiving regular shipments said their incoming stock has dropped dramatically over recent months. Some local jewelry stores that previously listed Rolex as an official seller found their listings removed without clear explanation. In one case, a buyer shared that a long-standing Rolex jeweler suddenly lost its Rolex display area, and inventory was sent to a sister store in another state. This has triggered intense speculation about Rolex's strategy. Some watch dealers believe Rolex may be trying to centralize storage and distribution, moving from scattered local warehouses to a smaller number of larger centralized hubs. Others claim the company is preparing to reorganize how it handles watches before they reach dealers, possibly relocating stocks into corporate-run centers. These changes, real or rumored, feel unrealistic to many observers because they disrupt decades-old ways the industry worked. Collectors and enthusiasts reacted quickly online. Many posted screenshots of comments from authorized dealers that hinted at no new deliveries until 2026 due to internal redistribution delays. These messages fueled the interpretation that Rolex was consciously slowing distribution and reorganizing warehouse functions nationwide. Some buyers speculated that limited supplies and slower shipments could mean even longer wait times for popular models like the Submariner, GMT Master, and Daytona. In social media threads, dozens of United States Rolex owners expressed anxiety. Some wrote about years-long waitlists getting disrupted. One user shared a dramatic story of waiting 3 years for a specific model, only to have an unexpected dealer change cancel the order altogether. One customer complained that their authorized dealer just lost its Rolex license, which means they need to restart my waitlist elsewhere. This reflected how deep the shock ran in the Rolex community. In the midst of all this activity, there was also discussion about the company's broader strategies for the United States market. Rolex has been known to be investing in large projects, including a massive new headquarters and flagship retail space near Fifth Avenue in New York City. The structure is expected to house offices and a major retail space once completed. This might suggest that Rolex is relocating its United States center of gravity, potentially at the expense of traditional warehouse and service locations. Industry insiders pointed out that shifting warehousing and distribution is a logical step for luxury brands managing tight supply and global demand. But for the American market, the sudden rumors of closures felt abrupt. Many owners were baffled that such changes were seemingly happening quietly, without official press releases or broad media coverage. The lack of clarity left room for intense online debate, with some predicting price spikes in the secondary market as scarcity increases. Others worried about what this would mean for warranty repairs and official servicing of their watches. Even outside the direct community of collectors, news about the alleged closures triggered industry analysis on luxury goods distribution. Some financial commentators pointed out that Rolex's moves might reflect broader economic trends in how luxury companies manage inventory and store networks. Others linked these developments to Rolex's previous strategic moves, like its acquisition of retailers and changes to dealer relationships, moves that had already hinted at a potential overhaul in how distribution works. Rolex seems to be reducing its footprint in the United States entirely, moving more operations overseas, or transforming how customers interact with the brand going forward. This is not just about logistics. It's about what Rolex represents: a symbol of success, status, and engineering. The thought that Rolex might be closing major facilities, especially warehouses and service centers, struck many as a watershed moment for the American luxury watch market. For a better understanding of why Rolex is making these moves, let's take a look at some of the reasons behind them. The decline of authorized Rolex stores. There's another part of the Rolex story that has also caught people off guard: the mass changes and closures of authorized Rolex dealers across the United States and other markets. This shift has triggered worry, confusion, and heated discussion among buyers, collectors, and watch store owners alike. People are talking about how these changes could reshape how Rolex is sold and serviced in America. These developments are appearing not just in rumors, but in real discussions. Authorized dealers are the local jewelry stores and watch shops that have the official right to sell Rolex watches. For decades, these dealers were the main way Rolex reached customers. People would build relationships with these stores, get on wait lists for popular models, and trust them for after-sales support. But lately, many of these long-established dealers have lost their Rolex authorization. In some cities, former Rolex dealers have stopped carrying Rolex watches altogether or seen their display areas reduced. This has happened in markets across the United States. One reason for these closures is that Rolex has been changing its distribution priorities. According to those in the industry, some smaller or older Rolex authorized dealers have had their status revoked, often suddenly. One report showed that a local jeweler's Rolex area was completely stripped out, the inventory and client records were moved to another store, and the store no longer appears on Rolex's official list of authorized points of sale. This type of abrupt change has become a pattern for some dealers. Some dealers suggested this is part of Rolex's global strategy to consolidate and refine where the brand sells watches. According to industry analysis, Rolex has been reducing the size of its dealer network in many countries, removing dealers that don't fit its evolving brand standards or retail strategy. In Germany, for instance, reports indicate Rolex plans to end the licenses of about 40 boutiques, meaning those dealers will lose the right to sell Rolex watches. This trend could continue worldwide, including in the United States, as Rolex seeks more control over its channels. Another reason suspected by some buyers is that Rolex wants to move more inventory to selected, larger retail locations instead of many smaller ones. This means that when a dealer's sales volume is low or their showroom doesn't meet modern standards, Rolex may choose not to renew their authorization. Buyers in watch communities have pointed out that this shift could make it harder for everyday customers to find Rolex watches locally. The effect on customers has been very real. People report long wait lists being disrupted, orders being canceled, and confusion over where they should go to buy or service their watches. One collector shared how they were on a multi-year wait for a Rolex and then found out the store they trusted lost the brand, canceling all current orders and forcing them to restart the process with a different dealer. Stories like this are common in online discussions about dealer closures. For some dealers, the loss of a Rolex account means a serious financial impact. Rolex is one of the best-selling luxury watch brands in the world, and having it in a store's offerings can draw customers and boost overall sales. When a store loses that relationship, it can feel like a big hit to their business. For customers, because Rolex changed their strategy and reallocated inventory to other locations or their own brand stores, the local store could no longer justify keeping Rolex on display. The closures are also connected to how Rolex manages service and after-sales support. Some dealers that once offered official Rolex servicing have stopped doing so, pushing owners to send their watches to other cities or centralized service hubs. This has frustrated people who valued personal service from their trusted local dealer. Some customers said they were told to ship watches to New York or Dallas for maintenance instead of visiting their small-town dealer. Owners who once relied on the facility now find themselves having to adapt to new processes, often with longer turnaround times. Industry experts have offered perspectives on why this is happening. They say that Rolex wants tighter control over where and how its watches are sold and serviced. By reducing the number of authorized outlets and concentrating inventory in fewer, higher-profile locations, Rolex can influence both scarcity and desirability. This can make it easier to maintain high prices and control customer experiences. While this strategy might benefit the brand's long-term image, it has created a short-term problem among buyers and dealers. Some observers note that this shift is part of broader trends in luxury retail. Many high-end brands are re-evaluating how they distribute their products, focusing more on flagship boutiques and fewer independent partners. Still, the pace of changes in the Rolex network, especially when dealers lose their licenses suddenly, has left many people uneasy. In the meantime, collectors and enthusiasts would continue to watch these developments closely. However, there are other factors that are affecting how Rolex functions in recent times. Caught in the middle. Beneath the headlines, there's another shock: huge changes in the wait lists, secondary market pricing, and broad market dynamics for Rolex watches. People who follow the luxury watch market closely say these shifts are reshaping how buyers think about Rolex availability, how much watches cost outside the stores, and how long people wait to get the models they want. Unlike typical supply issues, today's market patterns reflect deep changes in consumer demand, resale activity, and dealer strategy, making Rolex pricing and availability a major topic. For many years, Rolex watches were famous for having extremely long wait lists at authorized dealers. Popular models could have wait times reported in years rather than months. These long wait lists created a sense of scarcity that pushed buyers toward the secondary market, where watches often sold for much more than their suggested retail price because they were hard to find at authorized dealers. But recent data shows that the dynamics are shifting. A recent report found that wait times at authorized dealers have shortened significantly compared to recent years. For example, the median wait for a Submariner dropped from roughly 105 days in 2023 to about 60 days by the end of 2024, and for a GMT Master from about 180 days to roughly 90 days. These shorter waits reflect changes in how inventory moves and how demand patterns are normalizing after an era of extreme scarcity. At the same time, the secondary market, which once dominated by high premiums that far outpaced retail prices, has shown signs of cooling and normalization. During the height of pandemic-era demand, some Rolex models would sell secondhand for over double their retail price because people were desperate to own them and lacked access through regular dealer channels. But recently, secondary prices have softened and stabilized. The Rolex share in the global secondary market has steadied around a solid 1/3 of all transactions, even as overall market conditions evolve. Industry tracking also shows that supply on the secondary market has grown, contributing to this slowdown in inflated prices. As more Rolex watches circulate through resale channels, there's now more inventory available than during the pandemic peak. That increase in secondary supply, along with evolving buyer behavior, has helped soften price premiums. Interestingly, Rolex has also moved into the certified pre-owned CPO market, which is beginning to shift how used Rolex watches are sold and valued. Rolex's CPO program has expanded availability and brought some resale transactions back under formal brand-controlled channels, potentially diverting sales from unofficial secondary markets and stabilizing pricing. All these shifts have direct consequences for buyers and collectors in the United States. For many people, shortened wait lists mean they may not have to wait years for a popular model. Instead, waits measured in months, or even available stock in some cases, are becoming more common as supply lines settle and dealers adjust their ordering practices. At the same time, secondary market prices, while still significant, are less extreme than before. Data from reports indicates the pace of price declines on the secondary market in early 2025 was the slowest in almost 3 years, suggesting that the market is stabilizing after a period of heavy corrections. Certain Rolex models even saw modest increases in secondary pricing during parts of the year. This means that although the market isn't as overheated as at its peak, Rolex retains strong resale value compared with many other watch brands. Despite the normalization, some buyers still buy watches on the secondary market instead of waiting at authorized dealers because it offers immediate ownership, even if that still means paying a premium. Others choose secondary sellers because they can sometimes find hard-to-get models faster than dealer wait lists allow. Market participants note that the difference between retail and secondary pricing has narrowed in some cases, making the secondary option more attractive for buyers who prioritize immediate possession over exact retail pricing. The impact of these price and waitlist shifts also affects collector strategies. In years past, many buyers treated certain Rolex models as near risk-free investments because they could buy at retail and resell at a hefty premium. With market stabilization and reduced secondary premiums, some collectors are now focusing more on long-term ownership and personal collecting passion rather than short-term speculative profit. This trend is changing how people approach acquiring Rolex watches as both status symbols and store of value items. Additional data shows broader market evolution driven by demographics too. Younger collectors, including Gen Z buyers, are shaping demand toward different types of watches, such as dress watches, and are less focused solely on the traditional Rolex steel sports models that dominated prior years. Brands across the luxury segment are feeling these taste shifts, influencing how Rolex and its competitors position their products. All these developments combine to create a complex and shifting market landscape for Rolex in the United States. The shock of warehouse closures and dealer changes adds to an already evolving picture of how people access, value, and trade Rolex watches. While some aspects of scarcity remain, the underlying dynamics of waitlists and secondary pricing are changing in ways that affect both new buyers and seasoned collectors. Surprising, that's not where it ends. Rolex still has some tricks up its sleeves. Rolex takes the wheel. One of the biggest industry stories of 2025 is how Rolex is changing the way it controls its distribution and sells watches. And this shift is affecting buyers, dealers, and the broader luxury watch market in the USA and beyond. Rolex has always been known for being extremely careful about who sells its watches and how they are sold. Unlike many brands that might try to put products everywhere, Rolex has long used a selective distribution strategy, meaning it only sells watches through a limited number of official partners and stores that meet its strict standards. This approach was designed to protect the brand's image and ensure customers have a premium experience. But in recent years, Rolex's strategy has evolved significantly. Instead of relying solely on a large network of independent authorized dealers, the company has begun reshaping its distribution to give Rolex itself, or Rolex-controlled retail partners, more influence over where and how watches are sold. This growing focus on direct control is one of the most important trends in the luxury watch industry today. One of the clearest signs of this shift was Rolex's acquisition of Bucherer, a major worldwide watch retailer with over 100 retail locations. For decades, Bucherer had been one of Rolex's largest independent partners, SACA, meaning it sold Rolex watches through its own stores. In 2023, however, Rolex purchased Bucherer outright, including the rights to these retail spaces. By bringing Bucherer under its direct control, Rolex gained a powerful foothold in retail, allowing it to directly influence store environments, inventory levels, customer experience, and pricing strategies. It also reduced Rolex's dependence on third-party businesses that were once independent partners. In practical terms, this means Rolex can allocate its most sought-after models to locations it directly influences, rather than only through unrelated dealers. Some industry experts believe this gives Rolex the ability to shape customer experiences more consistently and manage the scarcity of its watches in ways that strengthen demand. Another example of direct control is the opening of exclusive Rolex brand boutiques in major cities around the world. Reports show Rolex planning or opening flagship stores, such as a planned large boutique on Old Bond Street in London, that are designed to be experience centers where all aspects of Rolex sales and service are controlled by or closely tied to Rolex's strategy. While these boutique moves have grabbed headlines overseas, they have implications for the United States market too. Rumors and industry discussions suggest that in major markets like New York City, Rolex is consolidating how and where its brand appears at the point of sale, potentially reducing the number of independent, authorized dealers in favor of flagship or boutique experiences that give Rolex more influence over customer interaction and inventory allocation. At the same time, Rolex is not closing all doors to traditional authorized dealers. In a 2025 interview at Dubai Watch Week, Rolex's CEO Jean-Frédéric Dufour confirmed that Rolex will continue to sell most of its watches through its network of authorized dealers, and that stores like Sadiki and other long-time partners remain vital. He emphasized that this model, selling through carefully chosen partners, is part of Rolex's heritage. What makes the current moment interesting is how these two ideas, selective distribution and increasing direct control, are working together. First, Rolex still relies on a network of trusted partners. But second, it is clearly reducing the total number of dealers, prioritizing flagship experiences, and positioning itself to exercise more influence over key parts of the retail ecosystem. Industry reporting suggests this is more than just a goal, it's a structural shift. Retail network experts estimate that Rolex's dealer network has shrunk by around 20% over the past 5 years, and in the future, it could fall below 1,000 points of sale in major markets. A significant portion of the remaining distribution is expected to be through either boutiques controlled by Rolex or partner businesses that operate under stricter brand oversight. This approach gives Rolex several advantages. First, it can shape customer experience more carefully, ensuring that buyers encounter consistent presentation, service, and brand messaging no matter where they buy. Controlled boutiques and select authorized dealers trained in Rolex standards help reinforce the sense of exclusivity the brand is known for. Second, centralizing more control helps Rolex manage inventory allocation more strategically. With fewer distribution points, Rolex can decide which markets receive limited models and in what quantities, helping maintain high demand and perceived scarcity, a key part of its value proposition. Third, owning the retail channel directly, as with Bucherer, or influencing it through flagship boutiques can help Rolex capture more of the revenue and customer data normally shared with independent dealers. In other words, Rolex benefits from being closer to the final consumer, both financially and strategically. But of course, these moves also bring controversy. Many independent jewelers and smaller authorized dealers have voiced concern that as Rolex increases its retail footprint and influence, their businesses could shrink or lose competitiveness. Some industry analysts describe this as a redistribution of power, where Rolex is moving from a traditional producer that relies on thousands of independent sellers to a more vertically integrated luxury brand with stronger control over nearly every step of the sale. Customers, too, have mixed feelings. Some watch enthusiasts welcome the idea of boutique experiences that feel exclusive, personalized, and well-curated. Others worry that as Rolex tightens control, it will become harder to buy watches at traditional dealers, forcing more buyers to shop directly at flagship locations or compete for limited inventory. This signals a new era in one of the world's most prestigious luxury watch markets, end quote. A change that many are following closely. You know what's more? Rolex isn't the only brand involved in this plan, and it's really costing the other party. The hidden cost of Rolex's new power. The news that Rolex is closing warehouses and reshaping its retail network has stirred major debate, but one of the biggest shifts in the luxury watch industry in 2025 is the closure of a historic watch brand tied to Rolex's strategic expansion and the broader changes those moves are causing across the market. This point explores how the end of Carl F. Bucherer, a 137-year-old watchmaker, reflects a larger trend in luxury retail and stirs deep discussion about legacy, competition, and where the watch industry is headed. Carl F. Bucherer was one of the oldest Swiss watch brands. Founded in 1888, it had a long history of making its own watches and movements. It was family-owned and respected in the industry for its craftsmanship and heritage. Many customers loved Carl F. Bucherer watches for their quality and unique design. This brand had been sold in about 250 stores worldwide, including around 50 boutiques run by Bucherer's United States subsidiary, Tourneau. However, even with strong name recognition and global distribution, Carl F. Bucherer struggled financially. According to multiple reports, it never managed to turn a profit despite years of effort. Annual sales reached between 80 million and 100 million Swiss francs at times, but operating at a loss overall made it difficult to justify continuing the brand within Rolex's broader strategy. Estimates of total cumulative losses over decades run as high as 250 million Swiss francs. In February 2025, news broke that Rolex decided to discontinue Carl F. Bucherer as a watch brand. Employees were informed of the closure, and production was halted. The brand's products will gradually be phased out from stores, once a staple of luxury retail in Europe, the United States, and other markets. About 100 employees were affected, but Rolex reportedly aimed to relocate many of them to positions within its own operations, including a new factory in Bull, Switzerland. This closure wasn't just an ordinary business decision. It left many owners in shock. A brand tied to history, tradition, and independent Swiss watchmaking ended not because of lack of heritage, but because it didn't align with Rolex's evolving business model. Collectors and watch lovers expressed surprise and sadness online, sharing memories of Carl F. Bucherer pieces and wondering what the closure meant for the future of heritage brands in the industry. What's particularly noteworthy about this closure is its connection to Rolex's larger strategy of controlling distribution and retail presence. After Rolex acquired Bucherer, they began assessing what parts of Bucherer made the most strategic sense to keep and what did not. While the retail network and distribution power of Bucherer was valuable, the watch manufacturing label Carl F. Bucherer wasn't profitable. Rolex leaders decided that discontinuing it would allow the company to focus on stronger brand performance and greater retail integration. Experts in the industry see this as part of a broader trend in luxury retail. Major brands are increasingly choosing to control their entire customer experience, from manufacturing and distribution to sales and after-sales service. Rolex has already made moves to tighten how watches are sold, where they are sold, and who sells them. This includes reducing the number of traditional authorized dealers, shifting some inventory to flagship or controlled stores, and even looking at how the pre-owned market functions under brand control. The closure of Karl F. Bucherer also raises questions about what happens to heritage brands in a market dominated by global powerhouses. In an era when competition is fierce and profitability matters more than ever, even brands with a century of history can disappear if they don't fit a larger strategy. It's a sign that luxury watch companies are focused not just on tradition, but on efficiency, market fit, and global strategy. Another interesting part of this shift involves the way Rolex and other luxury brands approach the pre-owned watch market. Rolex expanded its certified pre-owned CPO program, allowing watches that are as young as 2 years old to be certified and sold through authorized channels. The value in this approach is that it can help protect buyers and maintain brand reputation. Others fear it could make the market more closed off, with fewer independent options and less room for smaller players. Either way, it shows that Rolex isn't simply reacting to market trends, it's trying to shape them. For many collectors, the demise of Karl F. Bucherer is bittersweet. Some remember its unique designs, including watches with peripheral rotor movements that were technically impressive, but perhaps didn't connect with a broad audience. Others lament the loss of diversity in the watch world, where every brand brought something distinct to the table. The closure of a brand like Karl F. Bucherer has given rise to many questions that feel urgent and real. It touches the very foundation of what the luxury watch world has been for decades. If this breakdown changed how you think about luxury, let us know in the comments. Will other legacy brands face similar fates if they can't meet strict profitability and strategic goals? Will the watch world become more concentrated around a few dominant names? Drop your thoughts below. Hit that like button. Subscribe so you never miss our next deep dive into the hidden dynamics of wealth, status, and the brands desperately trying to capture both. Because in luxury, nothing is permanent.